And Ed, of course, was AIChE liaison. But also, I can tell you that in a separation division, many sessions, he always came and sit in the front, and he will take little notes and things. He asks some tough questions to people. He will ask only one question sometimes. And he also gave the most exciting lectures, always, with maybe few slides. But he kept everybody attention. So, Ed, I know you did a lot of things at the beginning. Maybe you want to share some of your thoughts.
I was trying to think of one of the most effective seminars I ever gave was I showed a slide of another professor. They were incomprehensible anyway. And I gave the talk using his slides. And no one ever noticed. But what I remember about the getting the division started was Jimmy had done an awful lot of work, an incredible amount of work, and it was absolutely Byzantine process that you had to go through, one challenge of committees and after another. And Jimmy navigated that set of rules. I never saw it done as well. The second thing was that Judd was extremely valuable in preventing people from polarizing. Any group of engineers immediately divides into teams and they fight with each other. And Judd, by sort of just nodding and slowly answering, I've tried this. It doesn't work for me. I thought for a while it was just you answer all questions at 10 words a minute. But while that works for Judd, it doesn't work for me. And that was the two of them together gave such a convincing story of why this made sense that the council just knuckled under right away. There was only one problem. The problem was that UOP originally wanted the first recipient of the award to be Gerhold. And the idea that you would have an award where the award named after the first recipient bridled, and we simply got around that by saying this is trivial relative to what we want to do.
I want to make one comment, DB. If you go back to 1971, that was the year that Judd King published his textbook called Separation Processes. And so
that's the best book in the world.
That was the cornerstone of the whole thing in the end, because there's so many students and people was aware of all of his textbooks and separation processes and his research in separation process. And he was really the flagstaff of the whole thing.
Well, that's a very kind comment. I've always looked upon that book as something that was a very improbable happening, because I wrote it as an assistant professor. Assistant professors don't write books, they do research, so it's tenure. And I had been asked to join into the effort by Don Hanson, Berkeley faculty member, founding Berkeley faculty member, who had become chair of the department. After about 4 months of the two of us having 2 or 3 meetings on the subject, he announced that department chairs don't have the time to write a book, and I could go ahead on my own if I wanted. But we accomplished one very important thing during our time of co-authorship, and that was for him to ask me whether the book should be on distillation or on all separations. And I thought for precisely 10 seconds, and said separations.
Yeah.
So that's how it came to be separation processes.
I remember using in 70s, your book is, I tell students to read, because he did not start with the distillation chapter, how separation takes place, and so it's a great book. Maybe you should think of doing a 2021 version.
Yeah, that book, another interesting thing about that book is that I did get the copyright back when McGraw-Hill let it go out of print, and there's a Dover edition, but there's also an online version that is freely accessible and costs nothing. So that is getting a number of downloads that roughly equates to the number of sales, which was new in 1980.
Oh,
The
that's
second edition in 1980.
that's interesting.
So that's it is still alive, and it's a very interesting example of what open access can do for people now.
Okay, John, we'll go to Bill before John. You are the director, and so John and I go back a long time. All of us, he's involved in separations for a long time, and always active, and even as meeting as recent in various places on membranes and separations area. So, John, your thoughts, and obviously involved heavily at the beginning on then yourself and NIST and membrane. So share your thoughts.
Well, I think my perspective is more as someone who was audience during the founding of the separation division. I came at it because of the position at NIST that I inherited from Rich. Rich had already gone over to the University of Colorado at that time, and I had taken over, and NIST had a separations division that they had just created, or an emphasis within it. And so one of the things that is kind of, you might call it synchronicity, but the founding of the separations division also acted as a catalyst for DOE's continuing workshops and focus points on separations as a discipline versus the breakdown into the transport processes skills, which had previously existed. It was mass transfer, it was transport phenomena, coupled heat mass transfer, those type of things, whereas separations as its own discipline was, still nucleating. Judd's textbook, which I just used 2 days ago to make sure I had a correction on a review of a paper that I was reviewing, and they had made a mistake. A sign error, and I went back to Judd's book to verify that I had recognized that sign error. But so I think that was the point of being in the audience at that time, was I get to meet all these neat people who knew a lot of things in disparate areas. And I could help connect them to the things we were trying to do at NIST. And actually, it happened further on as the advanced technology program got underway at NIST, and they said, okay, so what can we do that could be a critical input to industry in the chemical engineering area? It was separation science. So that initiative that had occurred at NIST back in the second half of the 1990s to try to do something to stimulate separations, whether it was in the biomedical area, whether it was in CPI industries, whatever it happened to be, that was just sort of, again, following the snowball division that created the networking opportunities for people to be talking. I acted as one of the initial directors, unelected, sort of appointed at the beginning, so that I could take on a task of helping to do the first programming at the Pittsburgh meeting. And that's my main claim to fame, is I could run a fax machine, right, and communicate with all these people. I could put together some ideas. And in doing that first programming was when I hit on the idea of having a tutorial section. I recruited people in the different areas of separations, absorption, distillation, crystallization, membranes, who would make a presentation that was as much tutorial as it was, gee whiz, this is my latest, greatest find. And so that idea of a tutorial that sort of told the overarching message was something I got a chance to repeat 3 more times within the membrane programming area. But other than that, I mean, that's it. It acted as a catalyst in my mind, things that came in a lot of other areas.
Hey, DB, I have to show you. Let me interrupt for a minute. I happen to have at home this, Judd will recognize this, from 1987, which is Separation and Purification's Critical Needs and Opportunities,
Yeah.
by Vision 2020, the 1998 Separations Roadmap, which is interesting. And it turns out that the National Academy just came out with the latest, which is a research agenda for transforming separation science. I'm writing a proposal, which is why I had to dig these three up. I happen to have them at home. But it gives a perspective, when Jimmy pointed out about Judd's book and then about using some of these things as a springboard, these reports have been quoted, I don't know, umpteen thousand times in different places to by an agenda for separations, not for distillation, not just for membranes. And so they're extremely useful and they're still valid. So, if you don't have a copy, get one.
I know Judd and Jimmy and all of you had a vision of involving students and young junior people. So let you know that our student awards and activities have enhanced immensely. You guys founded the society, and we're all very proud of that in essence. Students' involvement. But I have a question for Judd, Jimmy, and maybe Rich and anybody there, and also Ed. How did you select group 2? How did it become separation become group 2?
I can answer that last question right away. Group 2 at the time, before the separations division, was unit operations, with all the unit operations one by one as groups or sections of it. So over half of group 2 would be put into the separations division. The number was available, so they just simply changed the name of Group 2.
Oh, that's
how it happened.
I think I'm just about out of time, DB. Maybe you want to ask Bill?
Bill, that's really good.
The membranes?
So you are the pioneer in membranes, and you are the membrane section 2D chair, and all the things you did at the beginning. Can you share a few lines from your beginning in the membrane areas? The separate division.
I don't know if you can hear. One thing I think would be helpful to note is that at the time that the separations division formed, there was a fragmentation going on where adsorption people were going one direction, membranes were going another. And I think what happened with the formation of the division is it stopped that and kept us all together as more or less a community, which I think was very, very important.
Yeah, it was a challenge too to keep the groups together because many of them were so different. In distillation, you walk into a distillation session at one of our conferences, and every person in that session was from industry. Yeah. On the other hand, if you walk in Bill Corse's membrane session, there wouldn't be an empty seat in there. But all the people in that session were from academics, not industry people. You wouldn't find anybody there hardly. Now I believe that's changed over the years.
Oh yeah,
it has changed. But Jimmy, it was so important that in fact it's like stopping the secession of states. We stayed as a united group of separations people, even though the membrane sessions usually were on the last day. we still ended up saying we are all in this together, and I think it was among the most critical things to happen, or we would have fragmented into all the Balkans. I mean, it was so important.
I would underscore that. I think it did serve to keep people from fragmenting apart. And the second thing that was in there that I think is also important is that there was a strong industrial component to this division from the start. And at the time, AIChE leadership seemed to have been looking for ways to bring industrial people more into the Institute, to attend meetings, to make sure we got a large percentage of attendees from industry. And I think the separations division was very effective for that. And Ed will know better than I, but I suspect that was one of its selling points with council.
And they all began to interface in a lot of ways, like one of Bill Corse's membrane projects had to do with reducing reflux ratio in a distillation column.
And you wrote a fantastic article in CEP
Yeah.
on the distillation and pervaporation.
And in distillation, one of the big breakthroughs was developing a structured packing that not only gave you a good throughput, but gave you a good mass transfer. And that configuration spilled over into extraction and into membranes.
And Jimmy, what you're saying is what I was trying to say. You say it a little better, but I think what it did is, if we had all just gone different directions, we wouldn't have had the crossover that was possible by keeping us together and keeping us from trying to kill each other, and say that there's synergy if you can get along. You know, it's something that the United States could learn now, I think.
Yeah.
So DB, I think we're almost, we're basically out of time. We've been recording for about.
Well, thanks so very much. Well, Rani will give a closing remark. Thank you for really, this is a fantastic, able to get everybody hearing from you, seeing you. And I'm sure separation division will be, somebody will be celebrating 100 years, you know, and maybe our grandchildren, also people may be coming in the picture, you know. And so thank you very much. So Anil, go ahead and you can please give a closing remarks.
Thank you everyone for joining. I'll send you an email when it's up on the website. And also I meant to say that hopefully next year's chair will invite everyone for the dinner if we hold the dinner. If you're around, you're all welcome. But I'm not the chair, so I can't take the invitation. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for joining.